Alright, welcome back to another video, and today we're going to be talking about the Munich Security Conference. Now, before I actually get into what happened, I'd just like to give a little prelude, if you will, to the whole conference. So firstly, actually referencing my last video, a pretty decent argument for why the border skirmishes happened a couple days ago near Sunni, probably because of the meetings that were going to happen in Munich. Since, as I said in the last video, actually, historically, if you look back a lot, whenever there's been important meetings that were coming up between the Armenian and Azerbaijani sides, or even if they just went to the same meeting, Azerbaijani soldiers usually shoot open fire, or at least give a reason to open fire at the Armenian positions, mainly to show a force of power. Now, on to something a bit more funny, if you will. So, there's a video that came out a day before the conference in Munich started. I'll play that right now. The reason why this video is pretty funny is let's just think about it for a second. When you see a child, what comes to your mind first? Just only happy emotions, really, whenever you see a child. So imagine seeing a child with someone that you absolutely despise. This is a tactic that honestly has been used by many leaders in history, such as Stalin. There's a lot of pictures of Stalin with kids. Same with Kim Jong-un. Same with the silly mustache Austrian man. I'm not trying to make parallels. I'm trying to say that leaders historically usually picture themselves with children to make them look good. And Pashinyan is doing the exact same thing, which I personally find hilarious because everyone hates him. He knows everyone hates him. So he's going to make sure that his kid hugs him real tight, just real tight. Aw, that's so cute. The kid's hugging the person I want to, like, oust. Now, on to the actual meetings that happened. There's a couple interesting stuff, honestly. Some not worth mentioning, honestly, and some worth mentioning. Like, something that was pretty interesting, in my opinion, was the fact that Armenia met with representatives from Kosovo. Pashinyan met with the Prime Minister of Kosovo, Abin Kurti. And it should be noted that Armenia doesn't recognize Kosovo as a country. So it's just interesting that they had a meeting at all. Nothing really fruitful came out of the meeting or from any statements from the meeting. Reading it right now, the parties exchange ideas on the current situation and ongoing processes in the South Caucasus region and the Balkan security and stability. The Prime Minister of Kosovo expresses support to the Armenian people in the context of the developments of the recent years, knowing that both nations historically have been going through a difficult period. Now, if you really want, you could meticulously go through the words here as you can with any type of statement, but honestly, there's really no reason because there's nothing interesting. Something that is something a bit more interesting, honestly, is the fact that Pashinyan met with the Iraqi Prime Minister Mohammed Shia al-Sudani. This is something a lot of Armenians don't know, especially the ones who live in Armenia, because they don't really care about anything that has to do with Armenia, and I've known that from personal experience living here. But if you're someone from, if you're a diaspora in Armenia, you would know that historically Armenia has had really close ties with a couple of Arab nations such as Syria, Lebanon, and in this case Iraq. Armenians and the people who currently inhabit the state of Iraq have been in contact ever since the Ottoman Empire, especially during the Armenian genocide when the Armenians ended up in northern Iraq, and the Arabs who would live in what is now present day Iraq would know these Armenians and actually treat them pretty well since, they weren't slaughtering them. Now, what was actually talked about in this meeting, since I just said that Armenia isn't really prone to making good foreign relation decisions, nothing was also said that was fruitful in the statements. If I read it right now, the interlocutors emphasize Armenia-Iraq multicultural cooperation and the consistent implementation of agreements reached. In that regard, the sides emphasize the importance of Iraqi president's visit to Armenia last year and the upcoming visit of the Armenian president to Iraq. Something else that is important to note, going to Aliyev now, he met with representatives from Israel. Nope, not Netanyahu, that's the prime minister. And actually a pretty interesting dichotomy was pointed out by a Russian Arabic channel, Arabic channel that's in Russian. The Armenian prime minister met with Iraq. And if we think about the relations between Iraq and Israel, calling them rocky would be an understatement. Iraq, ever since their independence in, if I'm not mistaken, 1958, never recognized Israel and still do not recognize Israel and are very much against the existence of Israel. But a Muslim nation like Azerbaijan has been the first and only country to meet with Israel after October 7th. It really just shows from the perspective of the Arab nations where the southern Caucasus nations of Armenia and Azerbaijan stand on the issue. It should be noted that many Muslims are angered at the fact that Azerbaijan has very, very close ties to Israel, with the amount of oil that they sell to Israel, as well as the amount of Israeli weapons are given to Azerbaijan, which we all know is been only used against Armenia in war. Now, on to less important meetings would be the meeting that Pashinyan had with Olaf Scholz, Chancellor of Germany, and Antony Blinken, Secretary of State of the United States. Although these are like also prelude to what the big meeting kind of was, which was the tripartite meeting between Nikol Pashinyan, Aliyev, and Olaf Scholz. Something interesting to note that for some reason on the Azerbaijani Telegram channels they were spreading information that actually Olaf Scholz left the room where it would be only Nikol and Aliyev talking, and then instantly they took it back. I honestly couldn't think of a single reason why they would make that up or where that even came from. The most I could guess is just to say, "Oh, look, our big daddy is talking with Nikol one-on-one without his good friend Olaf Scholz." What we should get into is the fact that Aliyev met with Zelensky. Yes, yes, yes. He met with Zelensky. And for those who don't know, it's been really kept on low how decently well the relation between Ukraine and Azerbaijan is. In a statement, Aliyev noted that his team is in constant contact with the Ukrainian side to discuss bilateral relations, and Azerbaijan values its partnership with Ukraine. Azerbaijan supports the integrity and sovereignty of Ukraine and understands the situation due to its own experience with occupation and violation of territorial integrity. The president of Azerbaijan wished peace to the people of Ukraine. The Russians recently, as a show of protest to how obscenely pro-West Pashinyan is, and how much he really just does not like Russia. Russia has been a bit more lenient towards the Azerbaijanis. Something that we should all be thinking about and waiting for is a response to what Aliyev said to Zelensky, basically saying that we support your war, we support your territorial integrity, we don't support Russia. In extension, this is what Aliyev is saying. This could be flipped into a way of saying what Pashinyan said just a couple of weeks ago, the stance that Armenia does not support Russia's war in Ukraine. Now, that had a response from the Russians, but again, what will be interesting if the Russians actually make a response? If they don't, that says a lot. If they do, that says even less. As people who live in the Caucasus, we can see how two-faced Russia can be in this region. It's very interesting. The political climate in this region is very much different and less obvious. From what I can tell, this is a decent thought because there aren't many people who are smart enough or care enough about to really dive deep into the way that the major powers deal with these Caucasus nations. Although anywhere else where the smart people and people who care are, now it should be noted that I'm not calling everyone in Europe smart. I think there's a lot of idiots around. Although Europe has people who can think and who care. In Armenia, you don't have people who care or think. There's only a very select few, and whoever they are not in the country at all. So that's the video. If you wanted to know what happened recently at the border, you can watch my next video, which will pop up after the outro. So thanks for watching. Hope you got something out of that. Don't forget to subscribe because that tells me that people like what I'm saying and that I should continue. Bye bye.